Hello, it's me, Jess. Welcome to my channel. I'm here with another channeled message. This is a specific message. It might resonate with you, it might not. All right, so the energy that's coming through in this one is crazy. It's unnerving, disrespectful. So I'm really just gonna get through this message, but I trust that Spirit does have a reason for bringing this message forward. And I think it is to explore this energy. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk around it. We're going to talk through it, but I'm not going to talk with it directly, because this energy that's coming through that I do feel is a person that you would actually know, or you've had, about them, or you've had some kind of contact with them in meet space. This is the kind of person that I feel like you should not have a conversation with. It's not a neutral energy to involve with this person or to be around this person at all, because they are just deceitful by nature. You can't trust what this person says. And I think there's a lot of things that go into realizing that. One of them is just intellect, being able to kind of put the patterns around this person together. And the other is psychological, to where you have the psychological fortitude, whatever that is, not to look away at the truth of what this person is. And, the way things always turn out around this person, for yourself and also for other people. I also think empathy is a factor here, because I think this person they'll have certain people that they use. So they're more careful with those relationships. And it's not because they are kind or they care about that person. It's because that person is supplying them with something that they want. And it's also part of that supply is cover. They give them access in some way to their targets, because they give them the appearance of being civilized and being safe or being approachable. And I feel like there's a lot of that going on here. So with that being said, let's talk about this. Now, this energy that I'm picking up on here, there's multiple, right? But the energy that's approaching me, I've picked up on in a lot of readings on my channel. I call it out a lot very directly, but there's been two recent experiences that I know I picked up on this exact energy on my channel recently. And I want to talk about that here real quick, just because I think it shows who this person is and why I'm taking the stance that I am, and why I think you should take this stance too. So the first recent one was this person approached me and they were cloaked in their energy, and there was a lot of vagueness. I feel like this person uses vagueness. I feel like they lie by omission. They're very tactical, actually, about what they say about themselves, but also what they leave out. And what they leave out, they can very easily say, oh, well, that was just a mistake, or I didn't think to mention that. And it's just indicative of the hyper manipulative, hyper strategic, Machiavellian nature of this particular person. So they cloaked their energy and approached me, and then they told me a lie. They gave me the impression. So they lied by kind of giving an impression. So this person is very aware of being called out, and they have maybe been called out a lot in the past. And so they've kind of practiced through this, or they just kind of think through in their mind of, what would I say if I was called out? They know that they need some kind of cover. Well, I need to have this to stand behind or that to stand behind. And a lot of it is kind of like idiocy of like, oh, well, I just didn't think to do that, or I didn't mean that, or, whatever. So they, cloak their energy, then they told me this lie, or they gave me the impression of it, because this person wants to be able to say, well, I didn't really say this or that. They want to catch something here on a technicality. And at the very least, they've distracted your mind. So you're focused on the technicality instead of focusing on, no, you knew what you were doing here, and actually focusing on them, and then maybe starting to uncover what their agenda might be. And the lie that they told me was that they wanted me to look into a feminine energy that was a third party in their situation. And that was not at all true, because it turns out they wanted me to look into a divine feminine energy who had a lot of boundaries and a lot of protection up around her. And what they really wanted was for me to disregard those boundaries in order to exploit and extrapolate information for them. And that also shows that this person, not only are they very strategic, because there's a lot of forethought that comes through with this person, but they're a user and they lack respect. Obviously, they lack respect for this divine feminine that they're trying to approach. They don't care about her boundaries and her right to say yes or no, or I want to be involved with you, or I don't. They don't respect that at all. And they also don't respect me, because clearly they knew, this is what I'm saying, there's forethought, there's planning, there's strategy. They knew that they needed to cloak and present in a certain way to me in order to get around my consent. Because if you've listened to my channel at all, you know that I make it pretty clear that I don't like liars, I don't like manipulators, and I don't like cheaters. Okay. We can unpack things on the back end where you find yourself in a third party situation, like attracted to somebody that way. We can unpack that all day long. But I don't like liars, and I don't like manipulators, and I don't like cheaters. And this person kind of knew that. And I have a feeling here that this person is all three, even if they're not all three in this particular scenario, maybe that they would like to be or something, but that's exactly who this person is. And they knew that they couldn't present the truth of themselves, the truth of the situation, but they still wanted what they wanted. And so they're not motivated by goodness, and they don't have any self-discipline to hold themselves back when they want to do something that is harmful to other people. And then when I called them out on it, this person wanted to play the sweet card. And I feel like this person does that usually. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. No, I'm not buying that, because this person, being as self-absorbed as they had to be to do this, as strategic, as forethought, where this divine feminine had put up so many boundaries. This is what I'm saying. You got to have the courage to just look at what it is that you are dealing with. And yeah, you might have to make a stand, but I'm not buying the sweet act from this person at all. Sweet people, genuinely kind people, don't go around doing stuff like that. So no, you can say whatever words you want to say of, oh, well, I didn't mean to. It's not adding up to reality. And this person, I think, is not used to that, because I think this person is very clever and they're very used to getting away with it. They're used to being seen. They're very controlling. That's really what this person is. They're kind of a puppet master, and they're very strategic about the way that they come across. They're very forethought about that. And this person operates a lot in the dark. They operate a lot in secrecy. And that's using different methods, by the way, because again, they'll just leave certain things out, little pockets of information. There's something here like cyclical about this as well. So, and there could be different people or groups that they are with that know certain sides of them. And this person very much kind of just changes the face to suit like the situation. And none of it is like genuinely authentic. And that's who this person is. And so, no, I'm not buying the sweet thing. This is a hyper manipulative person. So you really enter into a conversation with this person at your own risk. You could never believe anything that this person says. The second time that they came through recently is in a live stream, and honestly, usually that's when this person kind of comes through, and they try to once again cloak their energy as someone or something else in order to control the narrative. And in this particular instance, and like I said, they've done this many other times, they came through in the general reading, and I was asking Spirit what Spirit had for us. And this person cloaked their energy, pretended to be Spirit, and started talking about forgiveness. And there's always something just kind of off with this person. And you might have sensed that too, like if you've had your own experience, it's just like off. Something here doesn't really add up. And it doesn't add up between the superficial presentation of this person. And this is somebody who will use a lot of buzzwords, is what I'm getting. And the buzzwords, I think, depend on the kind of like group that they're a part of. Each group will have its own kind of like culture, like subculture. So they'll have like language and, things that are important to them. Well, this person will kind of study that. They'll learn the buzzwords, and that will suffice for depth, because this person doesn't actually share an interest in what these groups share. They just, they're very selfishly motivated. We'll talk more about that later on. But in this instance, it rubs me the wrong way because they were pretending to be Spirit and they were babbling about forgiveness. But the way they were speaking about forgiveness was from this very hollow perspective. It's like you could tell this person had never really wrestled with forgiveness. They never really wanted forgiveness for themselves, and really sought to understand it. Or they were never put in a predicament where they were really genuinely torn of, well, do I forgive this person? Because they seem like an abuser, and it seems like if I forgive this person, they're just going to harm me or other people. And I'm not sure that's the right thing to do. They haven't grappled with it on a deep level. They just know something superficial. And because they were basically trying to say kind of the way that like a narc abuser would put forgiveness onto people. Which is, oh, well, just forgive me so that you have to be around me. And if you don't, then you're a mean person, and you're the problem, not me. So it's very strategic. All of it, it's not coming from a genuine place. It's all very, very strategic. And I don't buy for a second that a person who's doing all that behind the scenes is a nice person, is a sweet person. They're disrespectful. They don't respect other people's right to their own sovereignty. So that is not a good person, or a person who could ever be a good person. No. So this is the person that's really coming through. And it's kind of the thread that I can pull on in order to unravel a certain situation that Spirit's got going on in the background. And I feel like that's why this message is really coming forward. I feel like I was kind of meant to explain that, like how I I feel that you should deal with this person in exactly that way, because there's so much that I can tell about this person, even energetically from a distance, of why you shouldn't tangle with it, and how I can tell that this person's not sincere. They're not sincere about making these certain changes. This is just game. This is just strategy, right? I feel like that is kind of a part of it, because there is some kind of, I want to say like spiritual lesson or karmic test. There's definitely some like spiritual mirroring that's going on in a particular situation. And it involves this person who is approaching me now. And I didn't really mention this because I feel like it's irrelevant, because again, I just don't think you should believe anything this person's saying, but they're basically approaching me and they're wanting to throw out buzzwords like, okay, well, I'm hearing I've been caught. And I don't know if they would say that, but it does feel this person's been caught and they've been called out, they've been seen. And that is why this is changing their behavior. It's not guilt. It's not anything like that. So this person wants to approach, I don't know, me or like you, I don't know. They want to approach somebody here that they've wronged, and they wronged this person from the shadows. And they want to say like, I'm sorry. I want to take responsibility as a buzzword here. I want to take responsibility for my actions. I want to take accountability. I am very sorry. They might want to meet you somewhere. They might want to travel, but obviously I don't think that you should do that. I don't think that you should give any information about yourself. And that's another thing that I want to point out about this person, because they're very sneaky about how they get information. This person has a very sneaky approach, because there's a scorpionic energy coming through with this person, which is probably not surprising, because Scorpio rules over like secrets and strategy. It rules over power dynamics, sex. And that's what this person ultimately wants. That is the thing that moves them. It's a very self-absorbed kind of thing. They want sex or they want power. And it makes me think of that quote that says, everything in life is about sex, except for sex, it's about power. This person like maybe wants that. They want money after marriage. They could want trauma, or they want to cause Scorpio always shows a soul that's split in two. So I think they might want to pull on your energy in some way through their strategy and through presenting in a certain way, that now it confuses your energy and it makes you unsure about what you're feeling, and also makes you unsure about your own position. So that's what they're really wanting, and that's what motivates them. But the reason it's confusing is because even though there's a scorpionic energy here, and Scorpio it's a deep sign. There's always depth to scorpionic energy, and Scorpio is like water energy too. So it's like a depth of feeling. Well, there is depth of feeling here with this person, but the depth here, it's crazy. The feelings here, like it's crazy. And I think it's because this person is so strategic, and they're such a liar, and they're such a hypocrite, that they bind themselves like up in knots. So it confuses that space, like their own internal emotions. There's like this, I don't know, like hysteria. There's like a chaotic nature, but a lot of their emotions too are like warlike, is kind of what I'm getting, because, you know, Scorpio in Vedic astrology is ruled over by Mars. In Western, it's ruled over by Pluto. Both of those are heavier, like malevolent energies if left to their own devices. But it's like warlike. So they're fueled by like jealousy, rage, competition. But this person with that scorpionic mind that they're misusing, because I've always said Scorpio people, they're the best of the best, or they are the worst of the worst. This person is the worst of the worst. And they're the worst of the worst because they have that strategic maneuvering capability. And it can seem very deep, and it can seem very emotional. But really, this person is just very strategic about hiding that. And they hide it actually with a superficial energy. This person actually likes to keep things on a superficial level. But the superficial level for this person, here's where this gets confusing, is moon. It's like some kind of moon energy. And I get that a lot. Now, moon, it's a watery energy, and it pulls on the emotions. So I think weirdly, their facade management here and keeping things on a superficial level is a way that they manage their own emotions and kind of pull on their own emotions, like wherever they want it. And this is this controlling energy. This person's really a puppet master behind the scenes, but they use this disguise of the moon. Now, the moon can seem very beautiful. It can be like a very glamorous kind of energy. So this person may have a way of making things that are treacherous and terrible seem very glamorous. Or they could themselves come across very glamorous. It's also like obviously a very nurturing energy, and it is an energy about like it reflects the light. So there could be some kind of reflected glory here, or again, reflects the light of the sun, and the sun is philosophies. So again, this person kind of perverts philosophies is what I'm getting to maintain all of this like beneath the surface. And Scorpio, it's deep water that is stagnant, and you have to kind of like churn it up in order to process. But it's like this person doesn't want to do that. So this is incredibly avoidant behavior, but they're avoiding dealing with themselves, and they've got this elaborate, very well oiled, like apparatus. And again, it's by using this moon energy, which can seem very watery. So this person can present as though they are caring, especially caring, because the moon's a very nurturing energy, that they're very caring. And that's why they're doing the things that they do. That's another thing. This person's just good at saying, well, I did what I did because I care about you so much. Or I did what I did because I was, caring, caring about something, some kind of cause or something so much, right? This is also the kind of person where I liken this to like the race car jackets, or like the race cars themselves, where they have all the sponsors' logos like all over them. This is a person who tries to wear a skin where they've got these logos that are like pushed all over them. And that is their superficial energy. So they like to associate with causes or certain hobbies but it's not authentic. And it's, again, it feels like very group oriented. So like when this person tries to weasel their way into a certain group, and say the group is like, I don't know, a group of moms or something. They like knitting. They do their like little stitch and bitch or something, they like knitting and, pumpkin spice lattes and all of it's like very cozy and like whatever. This person will like they'll want to be a part of that group of like, oh yeah, I go to the Stitch and Bitch on Sunday. And they just want the tag of that, because then people will associate them with that group of moms. That's very, and all those other women's energies and reputations are like, oh, I love those people. They're all so warm or funny and like, and then this person can kind of leech off of that, and they'll get themselves into positions as well, kind of like mom for some, a lot of people are good mothers and are very warm, and that's a very service oriented, like natural thing for people. But a lot of people shouldn't be parents, and we know that. Some of us have experienced that. And this person would do that because they're trying to fit in again, or they're trying to, instead of actually being a warm, caring, nurturing person, they want to associate themselves with roles or positions. And it can be social roles like that. Or it could be a role like the leader of the PTA. So, people are like, wow, they must really care about children's education. But they don't. They only care about managing their own facade. So everything that this person does is this like kind of puppet master ordeal behind the scenes. It's just they use this kind of moon energy in order to do it. And part of the moon energy here is secrecy. And this person that's coming through to me, I'm getting a third party energy where I feel like this person was a third party to you or to somebody here. Take this however it resonates. And they knew it. They absolutely knew that they were a third party. And it's because they wanted to like weasel their way in. And again, what they wanted, this person, it was something scorpionic. They're pretending that maybe, because I feel like they teamed up with somebody else here. Oh, well, I was involved with that person and it was because I care about them, or I was trying to help them or whatever. In actuality, they were hiding a very cunning, very clever, very strategic, self-absorbed nature. And they wanted something scorpionic for themselves. They wanted money. They wanted money after marriage. They wanted sex. They wanted power. They wanted status. And possibly some of these people wanted to traumatize somebody here. They wanted to harm, because Scorpio is the sign that rules over abuse. So, but they hide it. And they only hide it. They only go to the trouble of hiding it so that they can have access to the people, places, and things that they want, and so that they can continue to get away with it. And it's hard for people to accept that some people are like that. And I feel like that's kind of part of what's going on here. So I do feel this person is a third party. They were knowingly a third party. And they're approaching somebody here. And that's for a few different reasons here. So this is a third party, right? So there's at least 3 people involved. And I want to kind of use that. So there's person 1, person 2, and person 3. We've been talking about person 3 because that's the third party, right? So that's person number 3, right? Now, person number 2 is the person that I think that person number 3 has been in some kind of relationship with, but there's something about it that is secret. And it's not what it seems. And it's because they can control person number 2's mind. And the reason they very easily with their manipulative tactics. And the reason they can control person number 2's mind that way is because person number 2 is actually a very weak person, and they are split in themselves. And the reason that they're split is because person number 2 is a very likable person, but their goal in life, whether they've done a lot of their shadow work or not, their main goal is that they want to be a nice person. And that's what leads them astray. So it's hard to call out person number 2 here. And it's hard to dislike them and want to distance yourself from them, because person number 2 it's a genuine want to be nice to everybody. And that's what gets them in trouble. Because nice, if you've listened to my channel for any length of time, nice is a superficial energy, and nice and good are not the same things. And person number 2 needs to learn that. That's their karmic lesson, because person number 2 has been an accomplice to the dark, and they do kind of know it, and they don't want to look at it. And so person number 2 is also avoiding dipping into their scorpionic space in any kind of real way. to look at their shadow. Their shadow is that they're afraid of being mean. And I feel like person number 3 can play on that very easily with person number 2, because it's like the cardinal sin for person number 2 is being mean, not being an abuser, because person number 2 is involved with person number 3, and person number 3 is an abuser. Person number 3 can be an abuser all day long, so long as they manage their face appropriately. And I feel like person number 2 has been in either a certain very key situation, but it feels like multiple to me, where they needed to push person number 3, because they have some kind of supposedly relationship here, where they're in communication. They supposedly talk to each other. They would call each other friends, or maybe this third party, because this person number 3 has been a third party. I'm not quite sure to what though. Like it could have been to a romantic situation. So this person was like cheating and having an affair with person number 2 on person number 1. And a lot of you are person number 1, I think. But it also could be a platonic situation where they were gossiping, or like behind, like person number 2 was hanging out with person number 3, even though person number 3 had hurt person number 1. And person number 1 doesn't want person number 3 to know private information, because you'd have to be nuts to want person number 3 to know anything or have any kind of access to you. That's not respected by person number 2, because person number 2 is not concerned with being a good person. They're not concerned with being a good friend or a good partner. They're concerned with being liked. And being liked is better. If you want to be liked by everyone, you have to be a superficial person like person number 3. And that's where person number 2's soul is split. I don't think person number 3 is like a sadist or like a terrible person or wants to be that way. It's just when push comes to shove. And I think that's spirit has put person number 2 in a karmic position where they have to make a karmic choice. Is it person number 1 or person number 3? And it's not just a matter of choosing, oh, it's person number 1 or it's person number 3. It's choosing themselves. Is person number 2 going to be? And that has to do with how they handle this situation. And I feel like it plays out in conversations because there's like a real Libran relation, or real Libran energy around person number 2. They might have a lot of Libra in their charts. So they need to have a particular one-to-one conversation with person number 1, where they need to be honest about person number 3 probably. And not just give the facade, so that they can play both sides. Because that's what person number 2, well, I want to keep my relationship with person number 1. Person number 1 will have nothing to do with me if they know something about my involvement with person number 3. So now they're a liar, just like person number 3. So it's like person number 2. I think they also need to have some kind of conversation with person number 3 of, hey, person number 1 and I have this kind of relationship. So you need to respect that, because having whatever conversation here is going to bring out the depth in both person number 1 and person number 3 for person number 2 to see. The depth in person number 1 is excellent. It's really great, but they're also no nonsense. And so if person number 2 thinks being mean is the worst thing that you can be and not being an abuser, and person number 2 is psychologically invested in not looking at themselves, because that's part of what's going on with person number 2. We'll talk about that in a minute. They might get confused here and like side with an abuser. But also I think person number 3, in some way, they might go along with it and say, oh yeah, that's totally fine with me. But then that it won't really be fine. They'll still push the boundaries, because person number 3 pushes boundaries because they don't respect anybody. They don't respect anybody's boundaries. And person number 2 would start to see that in person number 3. But I don't think person number 2 has necessarily done that. So, but they're going to lose one of these relationships here. They have to. This is a checkpoint here, where spirit's saying person number 2 cannot keep going like this, because person number 2 sits on the fence of good and evil. They sit on the fence between person number 1 and person number 3. And spirit is saying you need karmas to unfold here. So I need to know what karmas you need, what lessons. This is like, which math class do you qualify into? Is it the higher version or is it the lower version? Because you have lessons that are going to come in. And I don't think person number 2 really wants to face that, because somehow person number 2 is invested in seeing themselves as a good person, which they're not. They're a nice person, but they're not a good person, because this person has colluded with pile number 3 energy. And it's not just with this pile number 3 person. I think that they just, person number 2 has found themselves in many conversations, I think directly with person number 3, but also with others, where they need to push. They need to not just accept something here because something isn't right. And you'd get that feeling with pile number 3. Every once in a while, it'll show itself. Even no matter how slick they are, it'll show itself. But this is a person that's like, I mean, how was I supposed to, like, I saw that guy with the van with the candy out there, and I said hi, and he seemed like such a nice guy, and like, I just assumed that was his kid. I mean, the kid looked a little uncomfortable, but sometimes kids are uncomfortable, like, what was I supposed to do? Like really push, like really ask? Meanwhile, something horrific happened in that situation. You get me? So person number 2 needs to cut the shit, and they need to start being a real person, and they need to start being a strong person, and they need to not be okay with abuse occurring around them. They think that because they don't perpetrate it, that they're not, but they play an integral role, because they they're the person that's like person number three's beard. Because person number two, who's such a nice person and liked by everybody, is in some way involved with person number three. It gives person number three a cover of civility. It makes people trust person number three because person number two trusts person number three. And something like that, I think, has reached some kind of boiling point because person number three is approaching me, or they're approaching person number one. They're trying to do something, and it's because of person number two here. So it could be, again, like if person number two is going to side with person number three, if they're going to continue Libran stuff, being in conversation with person number three, being in some kind of relationship with person number three, they are going to lose person number one. It cannot be any other way because person number one sees this dynamic actually very clearly. They might be confused about person number two, but they're not confused about person number three. They know that person number three is an abuser, that person number three is a bad person. And they are also like, what kind of person hangs out with somebody like that? You know, that's so person number two cannot clear things up with person number one unless they acknowledge the truth. They have to go through a series of events, which is acknowledging the truth about person number three, which person number two really doesn't want to do. Because acknowledging the truth about person number three, because they both are invested, person number two and person number three are both invested in this narrative of we are both nice people. And isn't that just the pinnacle? We are both nice people that made a mistake. And they're not. It might somewhat be true for pile number two, somewhat, but still not an excuse because they are an adult and there's more than enough here where they need to push and actually, if person number two was a real person and cared about people and bad things not going on, which I think they do, they just don't want to have to stand up to it. You know, again, they're just kind of a weak person. Then they would have to kind of push more and that they don't want to do because the reality here, the deeper reality, is that they're both conniving people. They're both strategic people that made a decision. Person number two didn't want to see the truth, and they also made a decision to cover up something here, to involve with person number three in a way that they knew person number one wouldn't agree with. They became like person number three. So person number two, it's kind of like they're sitting on Coney Island, you know, in Pinocchio. And person number two has just, you know, been on the island for a little bit. They've sprouted their ears, they're sprouted their tail, they're starting to make noises, and they need to get off that damn island before they turn into a full jackass. Like pile number three. And I'm also seeing the scene in the end of Mean Girls where it's like, oh, you're not plastic anymore. You're not pretending anymore. You're plastic. Cold, hard, shiny plastic. And the road there is just by being superficial. It's just by burying your head in the sand and not wanting to acknowledge. And so if pile number two acknowledges what person number three really is, that they're not a nice person, because person number two is at least genuine about wanting to be a nice person and they don't want to rock the boat. That's very much pile number two. Person number two, though, they don't want to rock the boat, but then they don't understand what that means because person number three rocks the boat. They just do it behind the scenes. And so person number two, I think, really, this is the difference between person number two and person number one. Person number two is upset that person number three's mask is slipping. They don't mind being around person number three. They don't want things to change. They don't want to have to confront this. They're more angry that person number three's mask is slipping and therefore it needs to be acknowledged, because if it's not acknowledged and it's not dealt with in an appropriate way, now person number two is thrown into doubt. And that's exactly karmically what's about to happen here. Is pile number three's depravity is going to slingshot back onto pile number two. Wow, because pile number two associated with it, covered for it. Knew something wasn't right, didn't question it, didn't push back on it, didn't make damn good and well sure that they don't hang out with abusers and people who, because pile number three's abusers, because they're so secretive, these abusers, and also because in part they have the cover of people like person number two, their abusers won't come forward. And so instead they're left scorpionic, they're left alone. They're left to deal with their abuse alone, in secret, in shame, in quiet little rooms, on therapy couches, and they can't ever be accepted by the group because person number three is too busy being accepted by the group because person number two is too busy being a whining, sniveling little coward and calling themselves a good person. Aren't they such a good person? They would hear me saying that, calling them a sniveling little coward, and they'd be like, did you hear her language? Oh my God, her language. I refuse to curse, and that makes me better than you. And it's like, you wouldn't stand up to anybody, so you're not better than me, actually. Grow a spine. And this person just refuses to do that. And so colludes with the darkness. And person number two doesn't want to have to confront that in themselves. That actually, in being a nice person, they have sacrificed goodness on their own altar. So they'd have to confront that person number three is actually not a nice person. They don't genuinely care about being a nice person like person number two actually does. They only care about themselves, and they find niceness the tool that best gets them there, because it's close enough for people like person number two to say, oh, well, I think that they're a good person. without having to understand that. So once they recognize that person number 3 is a good person, now person number 2 has to do their own shadow work in a real way. They have to, person number 2 is the kind that will go to a yoga class, but this is what I'm talking about. Person number 2 shadow work. Then all of a sudden they've got to ask themselves, why am I involved with a person like person number 3? How could I have not seen that? Why didn't I care? Because I kind of knew that something wasn't right. I kind of noticed the way his girlfriend backed into a corner and seemed kind of scared. And I almost said something, but why didn't I? Maybe I'm not as good of a person as I think I am, because good requires courage always. It requires teeth. And sometimes it requires you putting yourself in an uncomfortable position. And person number 2 doesn't want to do that. So person number 2 is just as selfish. That's their own selfishness. It's kind of self-preservational, but they don't want to risk it. And so their person number 2, really, if they do their shadow work, they're okay with other people being abused. So long as it's not them, so long as they don't have to see it, and so long as they can also maintain their reputation. That's the part of them that aligns with person number 3. That's the part of them that needs dealt with by them. And it's being called out in this particular situation here. And it's being called out by person number 1. Because person number 1 will stand on business. And I think for a lot of you are person number 1. Person number 1 is authentic. They are nice a lot of the times. And I think person number 2 thought that person number 1 was like them. Like, oh, you care about being nice. And person number 1 does care about being nice, but not when it's inappropriate. Person number 1 will stand up to person number 3. And maybe did, because person number 1 isn't actually okay with abuse going on. Behind the scenes or otherwise. If you're abusing people, they don't want you around them, and they don't want you around their kids, and they don't want you around their friends. They don't want you to have a mask of civility, because then justice and truth can't reach you. And those are your teachers, and they need to reach you because you need to be confronted with the consequences of your actions. Or how are you going to change? Person number 2, also their own weakness. They're like, well, let's hand person number 3 tools. Let's introduce them to spirituality. They don't need a punishment. They don't need to go to jail. Let's teach them about psychology. But tools are a neutral energy. And person number 3 is decrepit on the inside. Their intentions are decrepit. They've done a good job disguising them. And people like person number 2 are happy drinking the Kool-Aid. So when they'll find person number 2, maybe something like this is played out between these two, I'm not sure. So they'll find once they're doing that, they're treating pile number 3 with such benevolence. Where's the benevolence for their victims? It's nowhere to be seen, because pile number 3 is actually a terror. And person number 2, there's an acknowledgement of that in their actions, because it's considered rocking the boat for pile number 3 just to confront them with the fact that they're abusing people. They're so determined to abuse people behind the scenes that they are going to lash out and have another victim, and person number 2 doesn't want that to be them. And so they're perfectly fine telling the person number 3's victims that they don't deserve the justice that they need, and that we have to be delicate with person number 3. And that's niceness. No, it isn't. It's hypocrisy. And you're a co-abuser now. Like, person number 2 doesn't want to see any of that. But person number 1 is different. And that's person number 2 may well be shocked by person number 1, because they thought person number 1 was so focused on niceness. What they don't understand is that they're called to be more like person number 1, and their karmas will unfold to where they learn those lessons. Now that's walking the path with a person like person number 1, and other, getting around other people like that walk the talk and are not okay with hypocrisy. Or they're going to pile with person number 3. And I think person number 3's crimes are going to come to light. Person number 2 may be like a co-conspirator or something, because they actually did know. And I think it might be like, in a court of law or something. It's like shown that actually person number 2 knew a lot more, even though they didn't push back. Like, I think there's something here where it kind of comes out, and it maybe ruins person number 2's reputation, which they do actually care about more than they would like to admit, because they may need to have sacrificed their reputation of being just the nice person, where they just refuse to abide by pile number 3's behavior. They don't want to be a part of it. They don't want to be associated with it. They don't want to become a jackass on Coney Island with pile number 3. And so again, I think there was a bit of a shock with person number 1, that person number 1 will actually stand up to person number 3. And that's the difference between the two of them. And it's meant to wake person number 2 up. But again, I think person number 2 has a lot of soul searching to do, because it's not just with person number 3. It's a lot of other situations that they were in where it's like, why was I in that situation? I never push back. I never ask the questions that I need to. I don't out the people I need to. And I come up with reasons why, like, oh, well, I'm such a nice person. I couldn't have been expected to do that or to know that. Or when it's plain as, I feel like person number 1 showed person number 2 how you deal with person number 3. If you're actually a good person. I think now I feel like person number 1 doesn't have anything to do with either of these people. And that might be why person number 3 is trying to approach person number 1, because It could be that they're approaching person number one on behalf of both of them. And that's also a strategy by person number three, because person number three is going to do what? They're going to be nice. They're going to be nice. I was so nice in conversation and I used all the buzzwords. That's not what they're going to say to person number two, but that's what they're going to convey without saying it directly. I used all the buzzwords. So they're going to say something to person number two, like, I said I was going to take responsibility. I said that I was going to take accountability, not realizing that anybody with any sense of goodness, but also with any wits about them, doesn't give a single flying fuck what words person number three wants to vomit out of their decrepit mouth. It's meaningless coming from person number three. You might as well whistle or tell this person to go whistle, because it's meaningless, because person number one has person number three sussed out because they're real, because they have a depth to them. So they're seeing the depth in person number three, that it doesn't actually align with their superficial nature and they won't be a part of it. And so person number three is hoping that person number two goes, my God, well, person number one has just committed the cardinalist of sins. I mean, you abuse people, but that's not a cardinal sin. Pile number one sin is that they were mean. They said a potty word, a made up word that we invented and then said that we couldn't say. And if we said it, they were bad people. So that the actual bad people doing actual bad things that none of us have to be taught or socialized to know are bad. We don't talk about that. We talk about, they said the F word. That's what they want pile number two to think and believe and perpetrate in our world. And person number two might do it. They might do it because person number two they have psychological motive. Person number two doesn't want to have to admit who they've been and what they've colluded with, and that they've made things harder for good people by being a part of it. Now, the other thing is, for some of these pile number two people are further ahead, and I think they have actually cut off pile number three. Some of them have. I think they're still confused about it, and they still feel kind of on shaky ground. But I think that they have actually cut off person number three. And so person number two is kind of thinking, well, if I could get person number one back, because person number two ended their relationship with me over person number one. So if I could get person number one back on my side, then person number two will come back around and they'll see. It's all a strategy. Either way, it's a strategy here. To try to get person number two back. And it's not because they care. Pile number three does not want person number two back because they care. It's because they see a weakness in person number two that they can exploit. And they can either get what they want directly from them, which is sex, power, money after marriage. But I think mostly what pile number three wants from pile number two is a beard. A beard of I'm civil and I'm social. And I think there's like an energy of always partying between these two. So it could be that this is like a party kind of relationship, and that's especially if this was like an affair. So, it's just so fun. And that assists pile number two in their mental gymnastics of, this is, pile number three can't be all that bad because we have so much fun together, but it's always like it's in a party atmosphere. It also could be that there's something here about parties where like parties, like kind of family parties or like reunions, where everybody's invited because your blood. It has nothing to do with your behavior, although I think it should. If families were healthy, they wouldn't let abusers. If the family wants to stay together and actually have any semblance of a reunion with the people that they want to be associated with, and the bad apples that are not going to spoil the whole bunch or possibly harm other members of the family, then there should be some kind of stipulation here. But so that could be this party energy where it's like, see, we're all just having fun. But person number one has that sussed. Person number one's like, I don't want to break bread and dance around with an abuser. I'm not going to forget what you've done. Person number one's a different animal completely than person number two. And person number three is via person number two is their beard. They're kind of being forced to contend with person number one. And person number one is the mirror for both of these people. And neither of these people like what they see. Person number three's motive is, oh shit, this puts me at risk socially. Because how am I supposed to access my victims? How am I supposed to seem like everybody else will lie for me? Person number one won't. Person number two, it's psychologically motivated. I don't want to have to confront who I've really been. So both of them are getting a wake up call that they're not actually a good person, and that I've just heard they're half of what's wrong with this world. And I'm hearing that quote that says, all that is needed for evil to exist in the world is for good men to do nothing. Good men and good women to do nothing. Looking at you, person number two. Person number two wants to be like, well, I didn't abuse anybody. That's not my fault. How could I have been expected? No, but you collude with energy with pile number three. And even when the good Lord will put something on your radar that something's not right here, you don't give a single shit. That's who person number two is. So that's why you've got this person number three energy approaching person number one. Because what needs to happen here is there is no existence where person number two can repair their relationship with person number one with person number three in the picture. or on the periphery, because person number 3 has been on the periphery. And that's what's, person number 3, I don't want to like creep you out if you are person number 1, but it's like I'm just seeing them sneaking around in the shadows, like as the moon figure, like they're hiding themselves, like they're pretending, but I feel like they've been around you and like you not know. And they like that. It makes them have a sense of power. It's very cross-eyed sociopath. It's very very, pretending to be dumb, but actually being very cold. It's, cold-blooded predator reptile is what it is, from the shadows. And they've done that. Person number 2 knew this person was around as well, but they don't call that out. They're not like, wow, that's really fucked up. Actually, that person number 3 would do that to person number 1. And it's very clear that person number 1 has boundaries for person number 3. Person number 2 is not like, what a fucked up person. Like when they look at person number 3, they're like, what a nice person. They just are a little confused. Oh, well, they have emotions. They just want, no. So the reality between person number 2 and person number 3 is not that they're two nice people that just made a mistake. It's that they're two conniving people that made a decision and had a strategy and executed that. They would comfortably like to believe that mistake thing, because it means that they don't need to change their behavior. And it means that nobody has to be confronted with the reality of what person number 3 is. Because that means person number 3 is called out socially. Or will be, which is good. That's what spirit wants. So they stop abusing people. Because they're going to be called out by person number 2. Why don't you hang out with person number 3 anymore? You guys were so close. Person number 2 is going to say, well, I pulled my head out of my ass. Person number 3 is not a good person. And they were hurting people because they're a good person persona. They could keep it up because I'm actually a good person. I have a lot of friends. And people know that I'm a nice person and that I care about being a nice person. But I didn't realize that I was a weak person that was being fed off of. And actually a person that I really care about, and also a person who's exemplary in every way, was harmed by that person. And I couldn't abide by it. That's what person number 2 will say, if they're honest, which they're not. And that's something that person number 2 has to confront. They haven't been honest. They're not actually an honest person. And both of these people, person number 2 and person number 3, they want you to conflate a lot. Person number 2 wants you to make a lot of assumptions about what nice is. The nice is a good person, and that if they're nice, that if you're around them, no harm will come to you, and that you can trust things. That's not the case. They're actually a deeply untrustworthy person, because they are fickle, and they just don't want to be seen as rocking the boat, which is why spirit brought them person number 3, because person number 3 is what rocks the boat. And person number 2 colludes with person number 3 when they create a narrative in a social group that says anybody who calls out person number 3, so that includes any of person number 3's victims, which there's a lot, but they are not around really, who are having to heal in private because they can't come out and be accepted. Those people, if they come forward, they're rocking the boat, because person number 2 is really upset that person number 3's mask has fallen. That's the only thing that they care about. They don't actually care about justice or people's treatment or anything like that. Not really. They like to think that they do, but they don't. You can just look at their behavior and look at who they're around and who they tolerate being around. This is kind of a fake person too. They don't like that people are hurt, but they won't do anything to stop it. And it also means when person number 1, so this is somebody who's like strong and who's genuine, calls out person number 3, well, they're the problem because they were mean. And just because they don't want to corroborate with abuse. So all of this is getting all like jumbled here. So there is no way forward until person number 2 and person number 3 sever their karmic relationship. These are not soulmates. They hide behind the skirts of the other person. They keep each other, person number 2 keeps person number 3 evil, and person number 3 keeps person number 2 weak. And that's not okay. So person number 2 is the one that has to say, we're not two nice people that made a mistake. We're two conniving people that made a decision to involve with each other in a deceitful way. I'm not comfortable being deceitful, and this has to break. And person number 1 still might not want to take person number 2 back, because person number 2 has lied about their relationship with person number 3 in the past. And person number 1 is really nobody's fool. And you are safe around person number 1. If something happens to you, it's because person number 1 didn't know about it. But you can actually trust person number 1. And believe it or not, person number 2 kind of knows. Person number 1 is kind of the creme de la creme. If this is a romantic situation, you want to have babies with person number 1. Nothing will happen to your babies. Everything will happen to your babies marrying person number 3. And you won't know about it. And they'll just act like stupid and like they didn't know. And they'll have them around whoever they want that serves them. They'll use your kids as props, right? That's literally the choice here. Nice is really not a categorizing energy because everybody can pretend to be nice and often does. So person number 2 is in for a shock of the lifetime. I thought these two people were very similar. Why? Why would you think that? And so I think person number 2, over time, they will be confronted with, damn, pile number 1 is the shit. And I wish I could be around pile number 1. Everything would be so much better if I was around people like pile number 1, because pile number 1 also has friends and the people that are around pile number 1 are good people. And when they show themselves not to be good people, like, I think pile number 1 will even, like, they'll call them out. And if somebody's going to get help, then pile number 1's okay with it. But they also know this is the kind of, like, person number 3, pile number 1 would never believe person number 3 because they've proven themselves to be manipulative, disrespectful, a liar. You can't take that person's word. But if it's somebody who can be trusted, then person number 1 will do that. And so person number 2 is just going to be confused more and more over time just because they're weak. And they can't acknowledge that they've been a nice person to everybody, which you can't be a nice person to everybody. If you're a good person, you won't be nice to everybody. You want to walk down the murder ward and make friends? Is that what you want? You can't be nice to everybody. It's because being nice to certain people is being mean to other people. And I just feel like person number 2 needs to grow up. So that's what I have for you. If that resonates, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Bye, guys.